In this tutorial, I wanted to go over a few techniques for creating isometric illustrations in Illustrator. And this is a good technique because drawing forms in isometric view lets us see the different sides of an object without kind of distortion from perspective or foreshortening. So it's kind of, you'll see this a lot in technical illustrations. The first technique I'm going to use is creating guides and rotating them to create an isometric grid and then drawing along that. The first thing you want to do is unlock your guides so that you can access them. When I create guides, I usually turn on the rulers, hit Command R, and I can drag from this, drag a ruler from the side or from the top like this. I'm just going to undo that. Now what I'll do is I'll grab this one, and because I've unlocked the guides, I can move it around and select it, and you can see that the color changes when I select it. I'm going to double click on the selection tool, which brings up the move tool, and from here I might what I'll do is I'll just move it like 15 points horizontally, and just to get this going, and I'll hit copy, and that just moves that one over, and I'll just duplicate this action. So I'll select that last guide, and I'll hit Command D, multiple times. Oops, it works. You need to select something, so I think I unselected it by accident, but I'm going to select a bunch of these, and I'm going to go a little bit further than I need to go because to create the diagonals, I'm going to need a little bit extra space, and you might be able to move these later. And again, because I know it was exactly 15 points, if I need more, I can always move them. Okay, so I have this selected. What I'll do now is Command C and Command V to copy it down, and you can see it pasted it. I'm going to use the rotation tool. Now, again, when I think about making an isometric grid, I mean the main thing is that it's sort of like a parallel perspective. I think you'll see some common grids are maybe 30 degrees, 45 degrees, or 60. So, and you might see differences. So I'm going to do a 60-degree grid. So I'll rotate it 60 degrees. What does that look like? Okay, so we've got that set up. And then to make the other diagonal grid, I'm going to Command C and Command V, and then it needs to be negative 60. And since I'm already rotated 60 degrees, I'll just do negative 120 to kind of compensate. And I guess looking at this now, I could have just hit copy, which probably would have been better, because when I do this, you'll see. Oh, actually, it does line up pretty well. The thing you want to be careful of is sometimes your grid might look like this, and it might not actually. These lines might not intersect, so you just want to make sure that there you go, that those things line up, and you can see it already looks like a cube from there. Okay, so once I have that set up, I'm going to want to go back to my guides and lock my guides because I don't want these things floating around. You may also want to put snap to point or snap to one of these things here. I think snap to point will work for me, and I'm going to just start drawing my cube, let's say, and yeah, you can see it's snapping, which is great. And so if I wanted to draw a cube, something like this, and I'm just using this to guide me. So especially if I have something that's just really geometric, I think this might not be a perfect cube I end up making, but I think you'll get the idea. I'm going to connect those things, and I'm going to connect I'm going to connect everything on each plane so that it creates like a filled shape, and that's so that I can select these and give them a fill if I need to. Whoops, not sure. Okay, and so I'm just selecting these colors. And one thing you might want to be careful of is, looks like sometimes these corners get a little bit weird, so you can go into your stroke panel and maybe do a round join or a bevel join. It might look better, and you can beef this up a little bit, and you can play around with that, or even take off the strokes, right? So this is one technique for drawing, creating isometric illustrations. I imagine you could do type this way or other. Again, geometric things will work well in this, and I'm just, to turn off the guides, I'm just hitting Command and semicolon. So that's also good to kind of see your work as you go along. Okay, so let's look at another way to create an isometric illustration. The previous example I did with guides in Illustrator, and I used the 60-degree rotation. I mean, with the isometric grid, I think you have some flexibility with how much of a rotation you want. A pretty common rotation is 30 degrees or 45 degrees or 60 degrees. I feel like those are some common ones. I'm gonna create another isometric illustration, but I'm gonna use a different method in this case. I'm gonna start by drawing something like I'm gonna try to draw a cube. So I'll start with something like this, and then I'm gonna apply some transformations on this to kind of put it into isometric space. So this is something called the scale, shear, rotate method, because it involves those 3 steps. And what you're going to do is you'll scale this. So I'll select that, go to my scale tool, or hit S, and I need to do a non-uniform scale, and I want this to scale. I want to kind of squish it a little bit, so 86.602. I know it's kind of a weird number to remember, but we'll just kind of squish it, and then we will shear it. And you can access the shear tool, which is inside of here, and the shear angle we'll do as 30. Okay, so you can see that we've gone, we've kind of sheared it to the side, and the next thing we're going to do is take this and rotate it by -30. And now you'll see we have the top side of a cube. Okay, so I mean, to do the other things, we will start with a similar shape. Actually, you know what I should have done to make sure that I have everything all set up is maybe take this and make 3 copies of it if I'm going to make a cube, or maybe you know exactly what size. You could make a rectangle that's 120 by 120 or something, like, and use some math there, use some numbers. But again, I'm going to go ahead and do this one more time. So scale it. This is the SSR method. Scale 86.602. Shear it. Let's hit this, shear it, and we're going to shear it -30. Or I think it was +30, but we can, basically the direction you shear it is going to determine which side it is. And then I think if we say -30 here, there you go. So this is the one off to the side. Maybe I'll just scale all these together, scale it, and it saved the previous scale, so that's good. Yeah, and I think, again, if you shear it, depending on which way you shear it, I'm gonna make this the top. So I'm gonna rotate this 30. Oh, whoops. Oh, I guess it's this. Now it's this side. Okay, so I'll do the same thing with this. -30, and I think the rotation is -30 to get it to go. There we go, to go on the top. So here is that example. And you just want to go in and line that up as best you can. And sometimes it's easier with outline mode, or you can use the align. You can use, there you go, align things. Oops. If you select this, it'll align it to that side. That might be helpful. Or if you do something like this, you could align it to the bottom. Yeah, so that looks like it's pretty lined up. And again, one little thing is probably the corners need some adjustment on the strokes. So I might just round the corner or bevel it, depending on how particular you are. So that's one example. And yeah, the nice thing about this is you could take something like a circle, and you could you could also kind of put this into isometric view. We're going to scale it again, shear it. Say, and rotate it -30. Yeah, that's fine. So, you know, if you had a, let's say you had like a Lego block or something, this might be a good thing to do. I'm gonna just center it. Whoops. Oh, I don't need those. I just want to make sure that's, whoops, centered on top of this. Okay. And I think you could, you know, if you wanted to make it look like a Lego block, just kind of put this behind that, and, you know, maybe draw a line or draw something like this. And just, I'm gonna just push it backwards, so something like this. I know it's not like, it's not perfect, but I think you could do something like this. Okay, so yeah, this is maybe how you could create a Lego block. And again, you could take any form here. One last thing on this topic that I might want to show you is, you know, because this is kind of a repetitive action, you might want to create an action for this. And the way to create an action, I've done it here, but maybe I'll do it again. So what you can do is start with, you know, your form like this, and we'll create a new action just by hitting new in the action panel. So isometric action. And maybe this is just for the top side, because each side, if you wanted this to be on the left or right, it would be a slightly different action. But now you can see that right now we haven't recorded yet. We're going to start recording all the different actions that occur. So we'll scale it, and you can see it's starting to save what we're doing. So we'll do that, and we will go to shear. Shear that and rotate it. Hit R for rotation. There we go. So that's, whoops, I'm sorry. Now we stop the action, and then, you know, from there we could take, yeah, let's grab another shape, or maybe we'll just grab the star. We'll just like make a star, and now we can just click this, and when we want to do that action, we'll just select the action and press play, and boom, it's already set up. So this would be like an isometric. That you can see this would fit on the top. Let's say something like this. Yeah. So we've converted it into the isometric view. All right, I'm gonna keep going with one more technique. So I think actually I could probably use this to start with. Another way to kind of create 3D or isometric forms in Illustrator is to use an effect, to use the 3D effect. We can try these out. I think extrude and bevel will give us somewhat of a 3D effect, and you can select different modes here. So this, just to preview, what does this look like? Okay, that's, you know, 3D, but it's a little bit in perspective. Things are moving back. We can do isometric left and right here, right? So this gives us that view. You can select the shading. Maybe there's no shading. Plastic shading, diffuse shading, so something that you can play around with, or just wireframe, which may or may not be helpful. You know, there's different types of bevels here. I mean, I just kind of like playing around with this. I probably actually don't want to do that, but there's this extrude depth. Okay, so that is one more example of something you could try. There, you could do some revolves and rotations if you wanted something to kind of move along a circular path. But this, I think, this will get you part of the way there. Let's just do this with a square edge so we can have a comparison. So let's extrude it and bevel it, and we'll do the isometric. Maybe we'll do isometric top just to show you here's what that looks like. And I believe you can also change the way it's rotated in space this way, so that could be helpful as well. Okay, so those are some techniques that you can use to create isometric illustrations in Adobe Illustrator.